If you can hear meowing in the background, every single time I try and record, my cat screams for my attention. There's nothing that I can do about it. I'm just going to have to live with it. Hi, I'm Christy. Welcome to Weird and Witchy Shit, a place for, well, weird and witchy shit. Here we talk about everything from the magic of yoga, rituals, tarot, crystals, astrology, self-love, mental health, spiritual stuff, spooky things, and anything of the mystical variety. So if that sounds like the kind of shit you're into, then you're in the right place, my friend. Welcome to the coven. Today, let's talk about the toxic relationship of Zeus and Hera, or as I like to call it, lessons in why no good ever comes from sex with Zeus. So I'm sure that Zeus or Hera need no introduction, but I'll give them a brief one anyway. Zeus is the big sky daddy, king of the gods, and ancient Greece's biggest fuckboy. Hera is his long-suffering sister wife. Queen of the gods, goddess of marriage, the life of women, and childbirth. Zeus and Hera are both children of Rhea and Kronos, which makes them brother and sister, but Rhea and Kronos were also brother and sister, so I guess you could say that Zeus and Hera are brother and sister and cousins and husband and wife. So Zeus is actually Hera's younger brother and the youngest of 6 children that were born to Rhea and Kronos. But because Kronos ate all his children except Zeus, when Zeus defeated Kronos and all the children were reborn, they were reborn in opposite order, but Zeus was already born because he was never eaten. That technically made him the oldest, even though he was the youngest. So to summarise, husband, wife, cousins, brother, sister, older and younger siblings. I'm not judging, families are complicated. Zeus actually had 6 wives before Hera, and when he originally propositioned her, she probably seen he wasn't the most loyal, most faithful guy in the world, and she turned him down, but Zeus normally always gets what he wants. Zeus is nothing if not persistent, especially when it comes to a love interest, and he is normally quite creative in his ways of getting his love interest. And to pursue Hera, he decided to turn himself into a sad and sorry looking cuckoo bird, and I guess Hera must really fucking love cuckoo birds. So when she seen this poor thing out in the rain, soaked, looking miserable, she decided to pick it up, take it inside, hold it close to her motherly bosom with a warm embrace, and that is when the cuckoo bird revealed itself to actually be Zeus. Zeus then had sex with Hera. Consent in Greek mythology is a little bit blurry, but this sex made Hera feel that she kind of had to marry Zeus, like she was like a little bit shamed into it. So 7th time's a charm, and Zeus and Hera were married. The wedding of Zeus and Hera, king and queen of the gods, as I'm sure you can imagine, was a sacred and grand event that took place in the Garden of Hesperides. Mother Earth Gaia gifted the couple with a lifetime of good luck, and she also gave them a quince, which is a type of fruit. It kind of looks like an apple-pear hybrid that's kind of yellow. I've never seen a quince in real life before. I've never tried a quince. If you have, let me know. Is it any good? Is it more pear or more apple? I guess I actually am answering my own question, because the quince is a symbol of love, and this blossomed into a tree of golden apples, so I guess the quince is more apple. Who knows? The new couple celebrated their marriage in the Greek island of Samos, where they honeymooned for 300 years. I could really use a 300-year holiday, that would be great. The marital bliss was unfortunately short-lived, because Zeus, although many things, faithful is not one of them. Like I said, ancient Greece's biggest fuckboy. He had affairs with men, with women, with youths, with nymphs, with his own children, with his own sisters. There is quite possibly no one that Zeus would not shag. And this, much to Hera's dismay, meant that Zeus had a lot of illegitimate children. because if you know anything about Greek mythology, everyone is super fucking fertile. Sometimes they don't even have to have sex to get pregnant, and we'll find that out later on. Hera, however, she did remain faithful throughout her and Zeus's marriage, and she's notoriously known for being very jealous, very vengeful of these women and men that Zeus would cheat on her with, which, fair, but this would often lead to her often punishing the other person and not punishing Zeus, but you know how it is. This is probably because she is the goddess of marriage and she believes in the sanctity of marriage, and she's going to stand by her man no matter how much of a lying, cheating dirtbag he is. No offence, Zeus. I feel like when I tell these stories, it kind of comes off as if like I don't like Zeus. I actually do really like Zeus. Like, he is one of my favourite characters in Greek mythology. I just think it's really, really funny. I just imagine this like almighty, powerful god who really is just this big man-child and can't say no to pretty things. But I actually really like Zeus. I think he's like fucking great. Zeus, if you're listening, don't smite me. So Hera would punish the mistress instead of punishing the real problem. As Taylor Swift says, it must be exhausting always rooting for the anti-hero. So there was Europa, the young and beautiful Phoenician princess, who was walking in the fields one day with her two brothers, when off in the distance she saw a really beautiful looking white bull. This bull had something really majestic about it, so she was intrigued, so she went a little bit closer to go and take a closer look at this beautiful rare beast. The first thing that she noticed of the bull was its kind, loving eyes, and looking into the eyes of this bull, it instantly took Europa's heart. So after befriending the bull, Europa climbed onto its back, and after a while of playfully galloping around the field, the bull charged towards the sea, dove right in, and swam off into the distance. Her two brothers were looking at this in absolute disbelief, and they were horrified when they found that this bull had literally carried their sister over the sea. So the two brothers, they go back to their mum and dad and they're like, oh my god, like a bull kidnapped Europa, what are we going to do? And the parents told them that they were not to return back home until they found Europa. So they were sent off on a mission to go and find her. Don't come back unless you have your little sister here with you. And unfortunately, the boys never did come back home. And this probably surprises no one, but that majestic white bull, guess who it was? Dun dun dun, it was Rebecca Vardy's account. Just kidding, it was Zeus. Zeus noticed Europa down on Earth and thought that she was so beautiful that he just had to have her. So he devised this plan of turning into the white bull, going down to Earth and seducing her that way. I don't know why, but once Zeus and Europa had dived into the sea, they actually swam off to the Greek island of Crete, where Zeus would have his wicked way with Europa. She would end up staying here on the island of Crete for the rest of her life and would birth many, many children to Zeus. And the continent Europe was actually named after her. Cute. Hera actually never found out about this affair, which is probably just as well for Europa, because as you'll find out, not everyone was quite as lucky. Io was another mortal princess who caught the eye of Zeus. She was a princess of Argos and she was actually one of Hera's priestesses. Once again, he noticed her down on Earth, thought that she was so hot, and lacking all self-control, knew that he just had to have her. He obviously knew that he had to hide what was going on from Hera, so he had the wise idea of covering the earth with a thick layer of clouds so that from Mount Olympus, Hera wouldn't be able to see what was going on down on Earth. Obviously, this was a stupid idea and Hera seen right through it, so she descended down from Mount Olympus down to Earth to see what her husband was up to. When Zeus found out that Hera was on her way, he had the idea of hiding Io by turning her into a cow. And honestly, it's just so typical of men to turn their side bitches into cows instead of just being faithful and honest. I think that's something that we've all experienced. So when Hera got down to earth, she seen Zeus standing next to a cow, and she was like, what's the deal with the cow? And he was like, that's actually the first I've noticed that cow. I don't know, just a regular cow, I guess. So Hera decided to just play along with Zeus and his games, and she was like, oh, well, I think it's the most beautiful cow I've ever seen in my entire life, and I would absolutely love if I could own this cow for myself. It would mean the world to me. And really, what was Zeus to say to this? No, you can't take the cow because it's actually Io. So Hera took the cow for herself, moving her off to an isolated field, and she ordered Argus, the 100-eyed giant, to keep an eye on the cow at all times. And with 100 eyes on you, you are very unlikely to be able to escape. Zeus wanted to rescue Io from captivity, so he called on the help of Hermes, who is messenger of the gods and very musically talented. Zeus asked Hermes to go down to earth and lull Argus to sleep with his musical abilities, and that is exactly what he did. So one by one, the giant's 100 eyes started to close, and when they were all closed and he was sound asleep, that is when Hermes killed the giant. And this story is how Hera gifted the 100 eyes of Argos to the peacock, who now proudly wears them on his tail. When Hera noticed that Io had been freed, she sent the world's worst gadfly to follow her around and continuously bite her. And on top of this, Io was also being haunted by the spirit of the giant. So she was left to wander around the earth with this gadfly, being haunted by a spirit, and this eventually led her into complete insanity. Doomed to wander the earth, trying to escape the madness. But eventually Io reached Egypt, and this is where Zeus turned her back into her human form, and she gave birth to their son Epiphus. And like I said, it wasn't only young women that Zeus preyed upon, but also young men as well. Ganymede was said to have been the most beautiful of all the mortals on earth, and Zeus loves beautiful people, so it's no surprise that he wanted him. So Zeus took the form of an eagle, swooped down to earth, kidnapped Ganymede, and took him back to Mount Olympus to make him his cupbearer. The role of cupbearer had originally been that of Zeus and Hera's daughter, Hebe, so I can't imagine that went down too well when this hot young guy comes and takes Hera's daughter's place as cupbearer. But funnily enough, it wasn't actually Hera who punished Ganymede. I just assumed that she probably fucking hated him. As time went on, Ganymede started to notice the thirst of the mortals down on earth, and decided to take matter into his own hands, so poured out the water, wine and ambrosia of the gods down for the people, and this angered Zeus. However, Zeus did have a real soft spot for Ganymede, so he was torn between giving the boy a really hard punishment, but not wanting to see him suffer. So Zeus decided to place Ganymede in the sky as a constellation of stars, and that constellation of stars is Aquarius. And this is why Aquarius, although it is an air sign, is known as the water bearer or the water giver. So Ganymede lives in the sky so that he can provide for the mortals forever. Artemis, who was the goddess of the hunt and of wild animals, had one very loyal and very special follower, and this was the female huntress Callisto. Callisto, like all followers of Artemis, had sworn an oath of celibacy, but this meant absolutely fuck all to Zeus when he came down to earth, had sex with Callisto and impregnated her. When Artemis found out what happened, she was furious with Callisto, not with Zeus, with Callisto. And if you know the story of Medusa, then you will know that the gods are not shy when it comes to blaming the actions of men on women. And if you don't know the story of Medusa, I do have a video all about that. It is part of my deity series, which has 5 stories about women in Greek mythology and 5 yoga practices to go along with it. So Artemis sent Callisto away deep into the woods, and this is where Callisto gave birth to her and Zeus's son Arcas. And Arcas would grow up to be the king of Arcadia. Callisto, however, wasn't as fortunate as her son, and she had been turned into a bear. It might have been Zeus that turned her into a bear to try and hide his infidelity from Hera, because that does sound like something that he would do. Or it might have been Hera that turned her into a bear as punishment for sleeping with Zeus in the first place, because that does sound like something she would do. Or it might have been Artemis that turned Callisto into a bear for breaking her vow of celibacy, because that also sounds like something she would do. Either way, Callisto was now a bear, and to top it off, her son had been taken off her by Zeus and was given to the Titan Maia for her to raise him. So Callisto's fate was to wander in the woods in solitude for years and years and years and years, looking for her lost son. One day when Arcas had grown up, he was out walking in the woods when he happened upon a beautiful bear that he thought would make a prize kill for him. Even though Arcas was grown and Callisto hadn't seen him since he was a baby, she recognised him right away to be her son. When Arcas reached for his bow and arrow to kill Callisto, instead of running away, she continued to walk towards him, risking her life just to be close to her child. Zeus actually saw all of this happening from Mount Olympus and intervened so that his son wouldn't kill his own mother, and so that the pair could be reunited and spend eternity together. He also put them in the sky as constellations of stars. Callisto would be Ursa Major, the Great Bear, and Arcas, I could not remember his name there, and Arcas would be the constellation of stars Ursa Minor, the little bear. Semele, yet another mortal girl, was one of the priestesses in the temple of Zeus actually, and one day she slaughtered a bull as sacrifice to her favourite god, and when Zeus seen this, he thought, oh my god, a woman who can slaughter a bull, that's all I've ever wanted. So when Semele was in the river washing all the blood off her arms, Zeus emerged down from Mount Olympus and was like, hey, I'm Zeus, wanna bang? And she was like, yeah. So they started an affair. Zeus would often turn himself into an eagle and soar on down to earth to visit Semele. Hera obviously found out because, as Taylor Swift says, good wives always know. I really feel like I should do a series like Greek gods as Taylor Swift songs. I feel like Hera would be Mad Woman. Oh my god, or Better Than Revenge. Can you imagine Better Than Revenge, Hera's version? That would fucking bang. Oh my god, can you imagine all the people mentioned in this video doing a collaboration of would've, could've, should've, like Zeus, you're a crisis of my faith, and that's who I used to be because I'm a cow now, give me back my girlhood. Anyway, Zeus and Semele are having an ongoing affair. Hera knows about it and is obviously fucking furious, so she too comes down from Mount Olympus. But she disguises herself as an elderly lady and she befriends Semele. Semele begins to really trust the old lady, and she confides in her that not only is she having a secret affair, her lover is married, and oops, he is the god Zeus, and double oops, she is pregnant. So the old lady slash Hera says to Semele, well, how do you actually know that it's Zeus that you're having an affair with? How do you not know that it's one of like the lesser gods just pretending to be Zeus so that you'll have an affair with him? Semele never really had a reason before to doubt Zeus, but her friend and confidant, the old lady, putting this into her head planted the seed of doubt, and she really started to think to herself, oh, I actually don't know for sure that this is absolutely Zeus. So the kind old lady helped Semele devise a plan, and she suggested that she should simply just ask Zeus to reveal himself in his full godly essence, his full godly form to her, and then she would know for sure that it absolutely was Zeus. So the next time that Zeus swoops on down to Earth to visit Semele, she's laying in his arms, she's asking if he really loves her, and he's saying, yes, of course I really love you. And she says, well, if you do really love me, then can you please grant me one wish and promise me that you will keep your promise? Zeus tells her that he does really love her and he is willing to grant anything that she wishes, and he swears a solemn oath that whatever she asks for, he will do. So that is when she asks him to reveal himself to her in all his great, holy, godly form. Zeus was absolutely horrified because he knew that no mortal could ever see a god in his or her true form, because it would just be too much for them to handle, I guess, like too beautiful, and they would die. But he had already swore this sacred oath, and the gods do not go back on their word when they say something. That is like Bible, like that is like it's gonna happen. So Zeus does as Semele asks, and he transforms himself into his true form, and Semele, upon gazing upon him, dies immediately. Zeus was unable to save Semele, but he was able to save their unborn child. So he sliced her womb open, took out the unborn child, sliced his thigh open, stitched the baby into his inner thigh, and a couple of months later, the god of wine and pleasure, Dionysus, was born. Persephone was the daughter of Zeus, and just like Medusa, I actually do have an episode all about Persephone and Hades and how Persephone became queen of the underworld, if you are interested in that. So Zeus became so lustful of his own daughter Persephone that he transformed himself into a draken, which is a serpent dragon-like creature. In my head, I always pictured it as, I can never say this Pokemon's name, Gyarados, but with wings. I don't know how accurate that is. Anyway, Zeus came to Persephone as this draken, put Persephone to sleep, and had sex with her. Again, lessons in consent aside, he impregnates Persephone with his super sperm, and Persephone then gives birth to a little boy with draken horns, and she names him Zagreus, which is literally the coolest name I've ever heard. Zagreus was so powerful that even as a little baby, he was able to fire like thunderbolts out of his teeny tiny little baby fingers. And Zeus really loved Zagreus. He even let him sit on his throne, which he didn't do with just anybody. Hera was not impressed, and she decided that that baby just had to go. So Hera tricked Zagreus with some toys. Even though he is a mighty god who can shoot thunderbolts and stuff, he is still literally a baby. So he is distracted by these toys. And she manages to get his thunderbolts off him as a little trade for the toys, leaving Zagreus defenceless. Hera then orders the Titans to rip the baby to shreds, and they do. The only piece of him left over was his teeny tiny baby heart, which Zeus kept and actually put into a potion that he gave to his mortal lover Semele, who had not yet met her fate. And shortly after drinking the potion is when Semele became pregnant with her and Zeus's son Dionysus. So in a way you could say that Zagreus still lives on in Dionysus. Danae was daughter to a king who really wanted to carry on his bloodline and really wanted a son. But unfortunately to him, he actually only had daughters, so he thought the next best thing would be if he had a grandson. So the king went to visit an oracle to find out what his future family bloodline would look like, and the oracle told him that if he ever had a grandson, the boy would grow up and kill him. That's obviously not what you want to hear, so he was like, shit. And he locked Danae away in the tallest tower, keeping her in complete isolation away from everyone so that it would be impossible for her to ever get pregnant and for this prophecy to ever come true. But as we know, Zeus is so horny that he will literally find a way. There is nothing that will get in the way of Zeus having sex with an object of his desire. So one night Zeus turned himself into golden rain, poured himself into Danae's window and impregnated her that way. Or you could say a golden shower. I don't think Hera ever found out about this one, but as we know, no good comes from sex with Zeus, so there will be punishment in one way or another. Literally, don't have sex with Zeus because you will get pregnant and die. So Danae's father locked her and her baby in a chest and flung them out to sea. In Greek mythology, there is a lot of, I will not kill my flesh and blood, but I will put them in a circumstance that means that they absolutely will die without me having technically been the one to murder them. It's not actually all that bad for them though, because they actually did make their way to an island and set up a pretty good little life for themselves. Danae's baby grew up to be the great hero Perseus. And as for Perseus's grandfather, just know that if something is destined to be, then it will be. But that is a story for another time. So you're probably starting to notice a pattern here. If Zeus wants something, he will get it either by force or by trickery. And the story of Alcmene is no different. She was actually the great-granddaughter of Perseus and was extremely loyal to her new husband, Amphitryon. Honestly, see trying to say some of these names in a Glaswegian accent, like I can literally hear someone saying it and it just does not come out my mouth that way. Amphitryon was out on a mission at the time. There is a very long story behind this, but for the sake of just kind of sticking to the theme, we'll just say out on a mission. Zeus really wanted Alcmene, but she continuously turned down his advances because, like I said, she was very loyal and in love with her husband. Not even Zeus would persuade her otherwise. But Zeus, of course, found a way round it, as he always does, and he decided to disguise himself as her husband. And she thought that her husband had come back from his mission, like 3 days early, and she was really excited about this. So they ended up having sex for 3 nights in a row. And you won't believe this, but Alcmene fell pregnant. And when Amphitryon returned on the 4th night, they had sex, and he also got her pregnant. Literally, poor Alcmene. When the time was near for Alcmene to give birth, Zeus made an announcement that the descendant of Perseus, who was to be born the very next day, would be the chosen ruler and leader of Mycenae. Hera was not too thrilled by this announcement, so she asked her daughter, the goddess Illicit, and she was the goddess of childbirth. Hera asked if she would help her out and stop Alcmene from having that baby. So for 7 days and for 7 nights, Alcmene was in labour but could not get the baby out of her. At the same time, another woman who was descendant of Perseus was also pregnant, but she was only 7 months pregnant. So Hera then asked her daughter Illicit to induce this lady's labour so that her child would be born first, and by Zeus's word would be the chosen ruler and leader of Mycenae. Poor Alcmene though, she did actually manage to give birth to her babies eventually. Her son to Amphitryon she named Epicles, and her son to Zeus she named Aquarius, but later decided to change his name in hopes that if she picked a name that would honour Hera, it would soften her a little bit. So she decided to name her child Heracles, or Hercules as you may know him, which means glory of Hera, and it did not soften Hera. So that's it for the toxic relationship of Zeus and Hera. I am doing 6 of these Greek love story videos / podcasts in total. So if you like this one, I'm sure you'll like the others. Please check them out, and I'll see you again soon. Bye. If you'd like to continue the conversation, you can get me on Instagram at kristys_coven. That's KRISTYS_coven. You can also find me on YouTube at kristysyogacoven, where I post a lot of free yoga classes and shit like that. And I'd love to have you join, because it's not a coven if it's just me. And until next time, bye!